Okay, I'm gonna try this again because I tried this, I recorded this video, and guess what? The file got corrupted, which is fun. It's fun. So, I read a lot of books since I last filmed my every book that I read so far this year. I anticipated filming that video and then being like, I'm gonna start posting monthly wrap-ups and shit, but I never did that, so whatever. I'm trying a new thing where I'm gonna see if I can insert the picture here. Let's see if that works. And anyways, starting with the books that I read in May. The first book that I read in May, is Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. I had been reading through Harry Potter for the first time, like ever, and it was my favorite of the series so far. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. It's by J.K. Rowling, which is pretty obvious, I think. And yes, I enjoyed so many things I always knew existed, like through working at a bookstore, being a book lover, being an American, I don't know. And now it's good to finally put like a solid reference and understanding to all those things. The Marauders map, like, Patronuses, and like, Sirius Black. I always knew that people were obsessed with him. I never knew why, and now I love him. Other things I really enjoyed in this book were Lupin, just everything about him. Buckbeak, the hippogriff, he was fucking precious. I loved him. And everything to do with like that plot line that had to do with him. Bogarts, I believe is how it's pronounced. The creature that turns into your worst fear, and everything with the ridiculous spell and all that stuff. That scene where Lupin teaches them how to like deal with a Bogart. Fucking loved it. I am really into things that like morph into like your biggest fear. There's a symbol from the book It, with the clown and whatnot by Stephen King, that does that. When they go to Battlehem, there's a symbol that turns into their biggest fear. And I have that symbol tattooed. It's right there. Bloop. So, yes. I highly enjoyed this. I thought that, the introduction part where there's all of the Weasleys and Hermione, and they're all kind of sending birthday packages to Harry at the beginning of the book. I thought that those were all charming and gave you an in-depthness to, like, I don't know, the sweetness and connection that a lot of people have with Harry. I loved the Dementors. I always thought that they looked cool, just knowing them as a thing from Harry Potter before, and then finally being able to know what they are. Now I own the pop, because I needed it. And yeah, there's so many things that I liked there. I liked the time turner aspect. There were so many, like, twists and turns that, like, you didn't really see coming. There was a whole mystery that was surrounding Hermione and why she was acting weird and whatnot. There was lots that I enjoyed with it, and if you want, I don't know, a video where like I go through like my tabs and annotations. I know I don't have the book with me, but half of my books are here at my house and half of my books are shelved at my boyfriend's house, so that's where that is right now, but it's annotated and whatnot. And if you want me to go through that and give you more of an in-depth thought process, or if you want to see my full-length review for that, it will be in the description below, if I remember, which I will. But also, I feel like it's healthy for people to also point out the cons of the Harry Potter books, and just to point out a few. The repetitive plotline of them sending Harry back to the Dursleys every year started off as frustrating and then became ridiculous, because they're a mentally, physically, and emotionally abusive household. In Chamber of Secrets, they were starving him. Like, literally, he had to run away from home at the beginning of this book. It's a very unsafe, toxic environment for him to live in, and a lot of the people from Hogwarts know this, like the teachers and whatnot, and they just choose to continue sending him back there. I know they're like wizards and things work differently with them, but I'm assuming child abuse is the same all around. And I've heard that there's reasons for this from, like, my boyfriend who's obsessed with the series. But unless, like, I'm thinking it might be some sort of Percy Jackson thing, which that's a plotline in there where, like, repulsive human people kind of, give you, like, a mask or a tint that hides you from, like, the evil forces and whatnot. And I'm assuming it might be something like that, but even then, I don't think it'll justify putting him in that type of environment. There's that. There's lots of fat shaming in this book, which is a thing. She only brings in a fat character to use them as the butt of a joke or to illustrate that only fat people can be villains in her books. Like, you know, not all the villains are fat, but all the fat people are bad people, if that makes sense. Yes, there's that. I feel like the antagonists in the story are very one-dimensional. There's nothing that is like, oh, they're not layered. Like, I'm aware that, like, Snape turns out to have layers later in the series, but the thing is, Draco is just a dick to be a dick. Snape, if he was just a dick to Harry, it would make sense in terms of his character development that I know comes later in the books, but he's just a dick to be a dick to everyone. So, they're not very layered antagonists in her books. They're still cool, and I still appreciate them, but I think that's why, up until this point, my favorite antagonist will still be Gilderoy Lockhart, because I feel like he had the most layers out of everyone. Because, sure, he was a dick, but he had lots of motivations for doing what he did. And the pacing, which is gonna, I feel, forever be a problem of mine that I have with the series. For the first 2/3 of every single one of these books, it's like one event happens per chapter, and it's very slow going. It's still interesting, and she still builds a hell of a world and writes very well, but it's then you get to the third part of the book, and then it's like 37 events happen per chapter. There's plot twists, there's people dying, there's everything that should have just, instead of feeling like way too much here and nothing here, it should have been like scattered consistently, and she's just not very good at pacing, but she's very good at everything else, and I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read in May was Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover. This is my mom's favorite Colleen Hoover book, and me and my mom read lots of Colleen together, and this is probably one of my least favorite Colleen Hoover books. I wanted to like this a lot more just because I went into it with extremely high expectations, knowing that it was optioned to be a film, knowing that it's my mom's favorite one of hers, knowing I already like her books, and I just thought that aside from certain things, like I think that the inner monologue of Tate was very well done. I liked reading from the perspective of somebody who's in love with somebody they know they shouldn't be, because I feel like at least as a girl growing up in your life, you experience that at least once, sometimes way more than once. There's lots of other things, like I appreciated Cap, the character of Cap, and his relationship, like his friendship with Tate. I liked a lot of the side characters, like the brother and whatnot, and I did like Miles, but I feel like he's a lot of what my issues that lie with the book. I loved the last third of the book where we get revelations of why a lot of the characters are the way they are, why they are emotionally damaged, what their motivations are for keeping people at distance and whatnot, and learning Miles' backstory. There's so much that I liked about the ending, but throughout the whole book... Oh, and A1 sex scenes. This is probably some of the best sex scenes I've read in any sort of, you know, romance type book, which I will give Colleen her props with that. Cons. I feel like it was very repetitive after a while, where it was just like Miles would go on a plane ride and she would spend a bunch of time missing him. They wouldn't talk at all while he was away. He would get back, they would fuck, he'd be like, I don't want you to get attached to me, and then he would ignore her, and then the cycle would start again. I don't understand how you could read this book, at least up until the very end, where we're supposed to have a lot of empathy for Miles, but for majority of this book, I don't know why anyone would think that he was in love with Tate. He's very harmful to her, and I feel like this is an example of a very toxic male love interest that lots of people say Colleen's books have, but I never truly felt that until this. You know, the scene that happened twice with Miles in his lifetime, once in the past and once with Tate, where they're like, oh, like, spoilers, I guess, having sex with him, and he's just like, oh, they're like, just come, because he's being rude to them, or he's making them feel bad, and they just want him to literally come and get it over with so they don't have to be having sex with him anymore, because he's such a toxic, terrible human to these people. Yeah. So there's lots of things, and I felt like because he kept her at such a distance, I couldn't really fall for this romance in the way that I wanted to. I liked Miles as a character. I did not like Miles and Tate as a couple. There's that. Okay. I think that's the only one that I read in May. One moment. Okay, now, I have 2 more books that I read for the month of May. The next one is Leah on the Offbeat by Becky Albertalli. This is kind of a sequel companion novel to Love, Simon, and we focus on Leah and her realizing her sexuality and realizing that she's bisexual. Well, she's always known that she's bisexual, but kind of, I guess, coming to terms with that and getting a love interest that pertains to, you know, her having a queer love interest. Everyone can suck my dick hardcore, because I've heard so many negative reviews for this book, and this book I thought was fantastic. I gave this book a 5 out of 5 stars. First of all, I love Becky Albertalli's writing. I love her characters, the development they go through, the fact that not much plot happens in some of her books, but she writes such full-fleshed, interesting characters that they could be doing the most mundane things, and it'll be interesting because they are characters you get attached to. And I loved Leah. She is a strong, badass female, which I always look for in books. She's plus size, which I always look for in books. She's bisexual, which we stan. I just think almost all aspects of her personality are aspects that are part of my personality as well, so I really connected to her. She's a Slytherin. She, you know, describes herself as a fat Rory Gilmore. Like, she's just everything, and Abby Suzo is everything fucking Simon, and if you don't want me to spoil Simon versus the Homo sapiens agenda, his boyfriend, I won't say who that is, but his boyfriend, they're fucking precious. You get to see them come to grips with, you know, becoming an adult, kind of ish, like going to college and seeing all of that, and just look at all the tabs. This book was fucking wonderful. You can once again check out my review, or I can do like a full talk through about this, but this was the female book that I've been looking for, the coming of age, plus size, angry at the world girl that I have always been looking for. This story was everything. Literally, besides some frustrating miscommunications between some of the people, the only thing I didn't like about this book, or about Leah as a character, was that I felt she was very rude to her mother when her mother was just trying to find somebody to finally be with and be happy with. Other than that, I don't get the dislike. And yes, I loved this. Gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. Boom. Next book, is My Friend Dahmer by Derf Backderf. And yes, that's apparently his name. I don't know if that's real, but whatever. This is a graphic novel that is a semi-autobiographical novel about the man who wrote this book went to high school with Jeffrey Dahmer, the famous cannibal serial killer. And it's an interesting look into Jeffrey Dahmer and how he was as a kid. I feel like there's a good chunk at the end of the book that is not comic related, but it's notes about research that the author did, and he watched interviews about Jeffrey Dahmer talking about his childhood. He read books written by Dahmer's parents and all that jazz. And if it wasn't for that section in the back of the book, I would have rated this book lower. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. But the thing is, I don't know, this book, my main issue with this book, because I like the art, it's very gritty, it's very uncomfortable, but I think it suits well to this type of story, and it's a good narrative that was put together through interviews and things that he has researched about Dahmer. The thing is, my issue with this book is it's called My Friend Dahmer. Jeffrey Dahmer was not friends with this guy. This guy only took interest in Dahmer when Dahmer was acting mentally challenged, and when his friends could make fun of him with them. They did not connect to him. Any of the personal anecdotes that were in this book about Jeffrey Dahmer's life was taken through interviews and other stuff, not because Jeffrey Dahmer told him any of this stuff. Do you know why? Because they weren't friends. They weren't connected in any sort of way where I would define that as a friendship. They were acquaintances, and he went to high school with him. That's why I like, The Killer Next Door stuff. It's those, I like things where it's kind of straightforward like that, not hey, I was friends with this person when they really weren't. And I feel like this person, he's seen that Jeffrey had a terrible life and never chose to help him or be connected with him or kind of connect with him anymore. So like that, and I don't know, it just, so much of thinking about it frustrated me. It basically felt like just some kid who never really cared about Jeffrey and never thought about him after he graduated high school until he realized that he had become a serial killer. And then thought, oh shit, I can monetize on this guy's life and all the terrible things that have happened to him and the people after. 4 out of 5 stars. I feel like it is an interestingly put together account of Jeffrey Dahmer's life as a teenager, and I'm excited to see the film because I feel like the graphic novel will translate well into film. There you go. So there's that. Alright, this video's gotten way too long, so I'm gonna do a part 2. So if you want to see the rest of the books that I read in, like June and going on, please subscribe, tune in, give thumbs up, all that jazz. Bye!